What do you wish is the legacy of Task Force Dagger? I'm Herb Thompson, a Green Beret and resolutionist.
And I'm Corrie Thompson, Herb's less hairy half and branding expert.
Our guests come from various backgrounds, but one thing is true. They are special.
I should expand the discussion beyond SF because the Night Stalkers, unbelievable. I mean, they flew our infills. And, flying across the Hindu Kush, they are so passionate about what they do. We put the first two teams in the night of the 16th of October, ODA 595 into the west and Triple Nickel into the Panjshir Valley in the east. We had 7 solid days of the worst weather any of us had ever experienced, to include, the aviators in particular. I was getting crushed by SecDef. They wanted boots on the ground. You couldn't get them in. Every night we flew those hooks. There's nothing like a Chinook, man. You couldn't have fought Afghanistan the way we did without the Chinook.
Just to get in them elevations.
Just to get up and
passes.
Fast, right?
Yeah.
And those hook pilots, they are so passionate about their mission. So we flew every night with teams to get in. Storms upwards of over 25, 30,000 feet. Hindu Kush is as big as the state of Kentucky. Hindu Kush means Indian killer. That's what it translates into from the ancient wars in the region. It was maybe week plus longer before the aviators ever actually saw the mountain, because it was always covered with weather. Everything's on instruments, and they would just reach points. I think it was the first night after the initial infill of trying to get teams in, they turned around and came back. Would meet the aircraft every time they came back. And I mean this in the most manly way possible. Some of them were crying because they were so upset. They thought they had failed because they didn't get the team in. We'd sit in a little debrief tent. I'm like, man, that is not a failure. I am so happy to have a crew that knows when to turn back. We will get there. Of course, DC was not happy. They were like screaming for my head. At one point, someone said, they might relieve you. At one point, I was asked, did I want you to jump them in? I said, we're not jumping, no.
How common is it to jump in?
Parachute in for folks.
I would say it depends. I mean, we've certainly done airborne operations. You're guaranteeing you're going to lose team men if you jump people in the mountains of Afghanistan in that kind of weather. Anytime for that matter, but especially in that kind of weather. It's a legitimate infiltration technique, and we have used it throughout the war by different units, but it's just a tool. Sometimes you don't use that tool. You need another tool. In this case, that tool was the Night Stalkers, the great, incredible aviators, the Night Stalkers. We had CNN up in the JOC during that time.
And they're experts on there.
Well, it wasn't CNN per se. It was the daily briefings by the secretary they used to televise. And so we'd see them come on, and there would always be some comment about getting very gentle on CNN, but we kidded ourselves when either the secretary or his spokesperson would say something about getting boots on the ground. What we would say is, well, what the secretary really means is if freaking Mulholland would get his goat-smelling ass in gear and get some people, we'd be much happier, is what the translation really was. But it was just horrible. At that time, they said they'd never seen weather like that. And then on the 7th day, literally just a week, it stopped. We started getting teams on the ground. It's amazing. So an extremely dangerous environment. The Taliban back controllers were JTACs with most of the teams, not all of them, but and of course they were the key link to bringing the rain from close air support in. When the AC-130s came on station, of course, they're a game changer. When we got to the Battle of Anaconda, which was the largest battle the Army had fought since the Gulf War, with the 10th Mountain Division involved in that, and we had weather problems there that prevented air to come in, which the Taliban, of course, would take advantage of. Sometimes I just asked them to fly a C-130, just a slick C-130. But just hearing that would scare them away. Kept them away until we could reinforce them. Just the sound of that bird will make, okay, we don't want any of that. When we talk about Task Force Dagger, it's really that joint team. To include our interagency counterparts, I was fortunate to have what we used to call a National Intelligence Support Team, a NIST. I said, you got to get this for us. And you get this bureaucratic answer from DC. We don't send it to that level. Is the power of a joint team it punches well above its weight, because we're small, but we can do mighty things with the right, properly equipped, and with people who are just focused on getting the mission done. From an SF perspective, I hope the legacy is a Special Forces group is a freaking mighty weapon. SF became the core for I think virtually all the JSOTFs since then, and it's legit, because the folks who created and designed the SF group knew what they were doing. It's designed to be a warfighting headquarters. It could be even stronger if we could get a resource fight for SF. For whatever reason, I think the legacy is if you want a game-changing capability that's focused on leaving something behind that endures without our need, then you want a special forces.
Special forces.
I've always thought Afghanistan could have been a very different outcome had that mindset endured.
People have questioned as Gold Star family members, spouses, parents, if it was worth losing their loved one. What would you say to them?
Losing your loved one, losing your husband, your brother, your father, your son, I mean, that's forever. And we know that. I know this, the men and women, because we had plenty of 5th Group Legionnaires or women, support soldiers, intel signaliers, etc. So it's not just, but the guys at the sharp edge are guys. But I know they were where they wanted to be. The Ranger of Creed's got a great line, says, appreciating the hazards of my profession. That's true for everybody who's in this community. That's not to take it lightly at all. We are not frivolous. I would just say, as a commander, you're always trying to figure out where are the risks too much, what's first to gain. I know there's times the teams were mad at me for saying, that's too far. I need you to wait for a bit. Because there were points I thought it was too much risk to accept for the potential benefit, right? But we live in a profession that carries that risk. It sounds a little bit cavalier to say we joined the military and you hang Uncle Sam a blank check, up and to include your life. I understand why people say that, but it's a little cavalier because they're all precious. The answer, I think, is yes. We joined an organization whose specific intent is try to bring freedom and liberty and justice, or at least pieces of it, to oppressed people. And that is such a noble, I would say, sacred calling. Not that we're all, most of us are pretty far things from being saints in the SF world, but that calling, that purpose in life, that you're willing to put your life on the line for others. We work with a completely different ethnic group, religious group, whatever the case may be, but they're a fellow human being who deserves to enjoy the fruits of liberty to the point where they're willing to give their life or their health for that. I would never, ever seek to convince a Gold Star wife or children or family members, grieving for their loss. I would fully expect them to not understand that or to disagree with that. I can only answer as a fellow soldier and the guy who's responsible for giving them the orders that may result in that. And you should never do that lightly. Every time you make that decision, you have better damn well thought that through. But yeah, I do. I think what we went there to do in the wake of those terrible attacks, there's a lot of revision history going on now about going to Afghanistan. It was righteous. It needed to be done. And that was both for our country, but also once you're there in Afghanistan, I mean, that's a people there who've known nothing but war for generations. And
Going back through history, graveyard of empires.
There's some bad Afghans, just like there's some bad Americans, but there's some real bad Afghans. But most, I loved them. I mean, they were amazing people. When when ODA 555 liberated the American embassy in Kabul and went through that and cleared it and got booby traps out of it and crap, the caretaker was still there. I got a chance to meet the Afghan caretaker. All those years after we left, the Taliban imprisoned him. They would beat him. He stayed on to support the American embassy, made sure the Rose Garden was watered and tended. And we did the official flag raising that opened up the embassy officially. We had already done that, but with our flag, but the official one made sure he was there with us with his grandchildren. And you can't really repay him for that loyalty in any meaningful way other than just to say, hey, we understand. So certainly for our own lives that we've lost in SF, 7th Group, I think, paid the heaviest price over the years. But for all of our fellow Americans and comrades from other countries who've served with us over there, it was an absolutely noble cause, which makes the end of it even more crushing, of course. But I do. And I also say at the same time realize that may not soothe a heart that's broken forever.
Yeah, and their families are entitled to they've earned that.
Absolutely.
Right, but I think as a person, and spoken with a lot of the families that we've worked close to and served with, really, that's all you could want, is someone who, you can see it right here with you, John, is someone who cared, who's thought it out. And this isn't cavalier, if you will. It was a serious profession, and it's a profession that, unfortunately, people lose their life at times, and there's no easy way to say that.
I think also because of the longevity of the war, sometimes people lose sight of why it began.
Absolutely. 20 years is a long
Long
time.
war.
Every administration's been guilty and not made the right choices over there. Now that we're 4 years after pulling out of Afghanistan, do you have any thoughts on where we're at?
Yeah, it's heartbreaking. It's crushing to see what's happened, and plenty of blame to go around. The United States made a lot of mistakes in how we managed that war. I'll make a statement here for something that many of us believe very deeply in. The United States as a nation and the Department of Defense, but it's much bigger than DoD. It's really a government issue. We've never wrestled with what it takes organizationally and institutionally to deal with these type of wars. The world wars, the large-scale conflicts, if you will, very industrial, and we have a really good grasp on that. But war in and among the people, like Afghanistan and really like Iraq, any of these kind of wars require a completely different kind of structural organism, infrastructure to manage, to understand this, because Afghanistan is more than a tactical operational fight. We tried to do what people use the term nation building, but we suck at it. And that doesn't necessarily mean it shouldn't be done. We've never invested in the time or effort to build standing capabilities so that when we do find ourselves in these kind of conflicts, the organs of U.S. government, whether it's state, treasury, private industry, who are educated on what it takes to win an irregular war. Our answer, and I've not a slam against 18th Airborne Corps or the regular Army, our answer to these things is 18th Airborne Corps or a MEF, a Marine Expeditionary Force. These large standing corps level structures to manage fights that they actually have little expertise in managing. There's a deep need, many of us in our part of the world, the irregular warfare part of the world, believe for a standing integrated whole of government architecture that could build coherent strategies, because we never had a coherent strategy. It changed from administration to administration, military leadership to military leadership. We don't have anything that has professionally sought to master the art of waging irregular warfare. The answer to the United States will be, well, then we'll just stay away from that stuff. Like Lenin said, you may not be interested in war, but war is interested in you. You may not get a choice to go wage this kind of conflict. The Special Forces group level, we had a pretty good grip on that. Our agency counterparts from the paramilitary world definitely had a good grip on that. But then we don't end up, and I understand that we should be running that fight, but
it grows bigger.
It grows bigger, and there's a need to be able to do these things competently at whatever scale. It could be small, big. A larger lesson for our nation is, once again, Vietnam might have been the first one that people remember, but we have failed to come through on a solution that endures once we leave. And that requires a different kind of structure and a different way of thinking about conflict with wars among the people, not industrial state-on-state conflict. To me, that should be a huge lesson learned for the government to take on. I don't see the signs of anybody wanting to do that, because it's ugly, it's nasty, it's
not
sticky.
easy, it's not quick.
It's not quick. There were things that we either did or failed to do that exacerbated corruption, that created conditions for this ultimate failure 20 years on. Now, I will also say, in fairness, the Afghans themselves have to look themselves in the mirror, because there was, at the same time, 20 years of serious investment in them, in their military, in their government. I can't also help but think you had everything you needed to defeat these guys.
That's absolutely fair to say.
And and all you have to do is look at Ukraine, because there's a people who are going to say, not today. The Afghans also have to be honest with themselves and say, you know what, not our counterparts, the guys we trained, the Afghan Special Operations, the commandos, the zero units that the agency built, incredible partners. I'd put them against anybody, but that's not enough to stop what happened there. And so the Afghan people maybe failed themselves as well. Despite everything that may have gone wrong, at the end of the day, it's your country.
In an effort to be diplomatic, I always try and look at things from the multiple levels of potential. But when you're looking at, where do you disperse your people? Where is your effort coming to fruition? What business lines do you keep, going after? and to what end. When in a business perspective, you see that something is not working and the resources that you have may not be working with you, or you might not have the right partnerships, oftentimes you have to make difficult decisions. And are those decisions ever going to really align with what people feel?
Yeah.
You know, so I think there's so many complexities of this that it's far too complex to think of as to whether we should have or shouldn't have, or what we did or didn't do, but to the benefit of what we can't know without clearances or being on the inside. I want to believe that there were some reasons that it happened. I love what you said, and I think that it's a great point that these are opportunities to learn some hard lessons.
And any veterans out there, I know I've talked a lot, you talk a lot and everything you do. If any of them are feeling down, right? No, the veterans did their part. If you went over there, you fought, you did your
Amen.
mission, you served. Doesn't mean we made every decision. We always went the direction we needed to, but you did your part, and there's no shame there. There's nothing but honor of what you went over there and did.
Absolutely right. Our men and women did what the American people had asked them to do.
Yeah.
There's failure there in terms of us, things that we definitely as a government should have done or should not have done. But that wasn't a failure of the American fighting man or woman.
9/11, 2025, 24th anniversary. Will you do anything special on that day?
We hope to go up there on the 10th and join some of our teammates from USASOC. There's a great New York firefighter Green Beret family up there that we will honor who was lost. We have our statue up there and be very happy to be part of the commemoration up there. It'll be the first time in a number of years since we've been up there. So looking forward to that.
I love it.
I would love to know if you have a favorite military memory or, a story you want to share.
I will take a second and just say, on behalf of our spouses out there, how incredibly proud I am. Will always be my bride over there. She had a very unique and difficult rucksack to carry when we left. And my DCO, Frank Hudson, God love him, who probably curses me to the day I die, because I left him as my rear detachment commander. Because of course everybody wanted to go, right?
Oh yeah, he's
But I
Still.
needed a man who I could trust, because the rear detachment is so important. We didn't know what our casualties would be. All you knew is that you had to have people in back could deeply trust to take care of those functions. It has to be a blue chip player. You have to leave that guy back to make sure that the stuff's coming forward. It's being competently managed. You don't know the worst things that could happen, right? Frank came forward when we went to Iraq, so he got to go to Iraq. Frank did an incredible job as my DCO and the rear detachment commander in terms of ensuring that everything was getting pushed forward and managing the group while we were in the back. Maybe one story to tell, come back to, would be the horse soldier story. But on the family side, there's no textbook, there's no FM for our ladies. It had been a long time since 5th Group had been to war, a long time since our nation had been at war. There was nothing but Miriam and her instincts on working with the senior ladies, 9 commanders' wives, and others in the group on helping take care of the families. And we left before anybody at Fort Campbell, and we left in the night. We couldn't tell anybody what we were doing. Families had that constraint to work with as they're going to school, and the kids are going to school. Where's your dad? Well, I don't know. And then when we did have our casualties, she was phenomenal at taking care of, and I think she helped give example to a number of ladies who then later became senior commander wives as well. She was awesome. And those soldiers like Frank, who manned the rear while we were forward, General Garrison, ton of respect for her, had a saying, never judge your value by proximity to the battlefield, which I think is true, powerful nugget of wisdom. The guys at the sharp end, there's a special acknowledgement and recognition for what they're doing, because they're right there at the sharp edge. But without people supporting them, every now and then when our operators would being a little bit full of themselves, and because I hate to see support guys being made fun of or anything, or say, hey, look, without these guys, you're just a bunch of naked, hairy dudes throwing rocks. That's not a good look, right? So be thankful for what these people do, because without them, you're nothing. That's true. So you can be the baddest dude in the world, but
I agree with this. Support people. don't get the recognition. They don't get the people don't make movies about the sport. People
Yeah.
write books about it, but though
I
it
think
doesn't
that's
happen.
the statement you're most approached about too, is people try to minimize their experience when they're speaking with you. And I'm sure you've had that experience as well, where
They'll say,
people
I was
say,
just a cook, or I was just
Yeah.
a clerk.
No,
No, you did.
that's exactly right. There's no just about it. And God, because again, for one of a nail, right? The whole Napoleonic thing about the nail, the horseshoe comes off, the horse doesn't run, the message doesn't get delivered, the battle fails, right? They were phenomenal throughout that. They're building the bundles that we're packing after we have to put out those guys in the field, and they've got to be right. The parachute's got to work, and it's got to land in the right place. General Garrison's wisdom there is powerful. And you can have all of that without taking anything away from the guy at the sharp edge doing his or her job. So my bride and all the ladies of fifth group back then, and all of our spouses across these 20 years have given so much. The horse soldier statue, which was his own unconventional warfare project, but there was a sculptor, does a number of different things, but one of his primary areas of focus is horse statues. Dal Bloomberg, a great equestrian sculptor. So he does this sculpture and he sends it to Frank and says, hey, I would love to build this statue for you guys. So we're just crazy busy. And so I get this, this image from Frank, goes, hey, this guy wants to do a statue. And the horse looked great. The soldier looked terrible because he knew what he knew, but it's a guy with a K-pot on and an M16.
I actually thought you were going to say the reverse, that he had seen the pictures of the horses there, so he made it look really.
No, the horse, you're not going to find a horse that beautiful and stout in Afghanistan, but the horse was great. But the GI on top of him, like, oof, that's not one of our guys. So I'm like, hey, Frank, that's a great idea, but man, we're busy, man. But tell him he's got to work on that soldier, because he goes, yeah, I thought so too. Anyway, so fast forward, but the idea stays in there, like, maybe something to recognize to work up here would be pretty cool. When ODA 595, the horse soldier team, again, shout out to 534. I know you guys rode horses.
We don't want to hear from them.
So I think we know one of them.
I always say, look, man, the statue's for everybody. It's not, but of course, 595 thinks it's their statue.
Oh yeah,
representative of the entire task force, absolutely. But they met with Dow, and he then ended up with the design that you see with the statue. Very often, it's just what the guys looked like. So General Lambert initially started an effort to try to get money raised to do the statue, because we went into combat with Iraq. I just think it was just too hard getting the airspeed and altitude for the project. This great personal friend, John Brown, who was with UBS, had come down to Bragg, and they wanted to offer their help pro bono on providing financial assistance to Gold Star families. We had learned there's this evil people out there who are trying to separate, their SGLI and the different financial benefits that came to the Gold Star families. It's the worst possible time of their life, right? These evil bastards, these sharks. So John had a group of veterans at UBS up in New York who said, hey, look, man, we will volunteer our time to come be financial advisors to the Gold Star families to make sure that their money's being taken care of properly. So we're talking where he's a first generation Irish American, great guy, Irish American too, so we have that thing going on. And while he's in the office, I had a small picture of the print that we gave the police of the burial sites up in Afghanistan of the World Trade Center. And he's looking at the picture and he asked me about it, and I take him through the story of it. It's always emotional. And of course, he lived through that, and they lost friends in those commercial buildings. And I told him, yeah, in fact, we have a statue that we'd like to get made, and I want it to be the ground zero. I didn't want it to be at Fort Campbell or Fort Bragg, because then we'd just be the ones who saw it. I said, I want this for the American people to see this, so that when they go by it, they understand the third chapter of the story, if you will. And John said, I'll be happy to help you with that. So he kind of became my guerrilla chief parlance up there, because he knew the city and he knew very well connected in the commercial world. And then with another great Green Beret, I don't know if you ever met Colonel Andy Anderson. Andy knows everybody on planet Earth. He could sell snow to an Eskimo. My cutout, my link to John, because I can't raise money or anything, I'm a military guy. But John Brown, he puts an effort together, significantly made up of people from New York who lost friends. I mean, they saw friends come out windows and stuff. But Jerry Bruckheimer and many others, Gary Sinise, runs this effort to get this, raise this money for Dow to start building this statue out in his studio, I think in Oklahoma, if I remember correctly. And it's phenomenal. And everything, this takes years though. He's incorporated the statue that's in New York. There's an I-beam from the towers in it. There's gravel from Afghanistan in the cleat of the boot of the whole soldier. When it comes to tribes, Afghanistan, Iraq, they've got nothing on New York City. Between unions and favorite interests here and there, it's so Byzantine, it defies description. John Brown could navigate all that. He knew that. I'm going to put a plug in for Irish Americans. Everywhere we needed a key decision turned out to be an Irish American. I'm like going, all right, my man. Ground Zero belongs to the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey. It doesn't belong to New York. In terms of control, it's not the mayor or the governors, it's the Port Authority. And the head engineer still is a guy named Mike, Irish American, who is a retired Army engineer and phenomenal guy. I go to him, meeting with him. I'm like, hey, look, this statue needs to be on Ground Zero. The dream is it's on Ground Zero, providing overwatch of the two towers. Now, the overwatch is blocked now because the trees have grown. I didn't think about the trees. But anyway, but it's where it is. I learned at that point that there had been no statues allowed to go on to Ground Zero. And there had been like 1,700 requests, and legitimate ones, like from the fire department, things like that. Yeah, they'd all been turned down. There was one. Wow. There was one statue on it that had already kind of been pre-existing, but Mike's like, "We'll make this happen. We're going to make this happen." It's the 10th anniversary of 9/11. So the statue goes up to parade. To get it into that required, when I talk about all these tribes, like the different unions. But every time they all just said immediately yes, not a piece of friction whatsoever. In the middle of the night, one night, Mike just says, "We're putting the statue in tonight." Like at 3 a.m, his guys move it, and it's there up at the Liberty Plaza where it is today, which was the original site of the Greek Orthodox church. I'm not sure if it was a cathedral, but it was a church that was totally demolished when the building collapsed. It collapsed on the church, but our Greek Orthodox brother there, we had to get permission from them as well because they literally owned that piece of ground. We tell him the story, and he's originally a Greek, so he's originally a Greek soldier. He was all for it. He was like, absolutely, because they've built a new one at the other end of the plaza that the statue sits on, a new church there. We're like, man, this is righteous. We got the blessings of our Orthodox brothers.
Which in New York City is nothing short of a miracle. Like
all of it,
tribes.
All of it. And it just happens. It was almost a 10-year effort to finally get that thing put together.
I think that speaks to the true essence of what a Green Beret is too. You're using the limited resources that you have. You're going in, you're, negotiating, you're patient to, see your mission all the way through.
It's become a rally point for veterans events, retirements, promotions. The SEALs every year do a Hudson River swim.
Yeah. I mean, when we go to New York City, we make sure if we don't stop, we're going by it. I'm getting a picture out the window and we're pointing at it, but usually we end up stopping.
The sculptor wasn't happy with me because the plinth that has the story on it, he was unhappy with that because I guess classically you just have something very brief. But we had to have the story on there. Mm-hmm. So that because I wanted certainly Americans to understand, hey, this is chapter 3 of the story. But I also wanted foreigners to understand that, hey, man, if you're with us, then you are with us. If you're against us, we will come for you. That's where it needs to be.
If it had been at Fort Bragg, it limits the visibility.
Yeah, it's just us seeing it.
The power that it really has.
We already get it.
I got to convince.
Hey,
get inspired. Like they're inspired. They're
there. And it's not. It's the Night Stalkers. It's the agency guys. It's our AFSOC brothers. It's the whole task force. That's really our special mission unit brothers going after Bin Laden. That's for everybody. So 595, not just you.
We're gonna probably get some emails on that one. They're like, no, it's just a joke about this. Sometimes
this is a joke. This,
but it is iconic. It's an iconic image.
Yes.
So.
We ask this question of our guests. Always end here. What do you value most?
Well, I hope it doesn't sound trite, but faith, my family, and my country.
Subscribe, like, and comment, and don't forget to set those notifications. We'll see you next week with another special guest.
Until then, own your journey.